Eliza and I recently took the ultimate Southern California food road trip, visiting restaurants, breweries, ice cream shops, and farms from San Diego to the San Gabriel Valley in Los Angeles County. You can find these very fun episodes in the This Is Taste feed. And we can't think of a better time to support these restaurants. Thanks to our friends at Visit California for supporting this epic journey. Visit www.visitcalifornia.com to plan the perfect getaway to California, the ultimate playground.
I think it stems a little bit from maybe my architecture and design background. I like to understand the why and then envision the result. And so when I think of a recipe, I'm envisioning how is someone going to feel as they make this? Is it going to be really frustrating? If it is, how can I make it more efficient, less stressful for them?
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Kristina Cho is an award-winning cookbook author, recipe developer, home cook, baker, food stylist, and photographer. Wow, what a career. Her terrific debut cookbook, Mooncakes and Milk Bread, won her 2 James Beard Awards, and her follow-up, Chinese Enough, is a big favorite for all of us at Taste. I was so happy to have Kristina in the studio, where we find out about how she pivoted from a career in architecture to work on food full-time. It was a bet that paid off, and we dig into Kristina's family history and how she writes about her incredibly inspired recipes. Also on the show, I have a really fun conversation with Eleanor Wilkinson. She is the author of a very cool new book, One Pot, One Portion. I hope you enjoy this episode. Kristina Cho, welcome to This Is Taste. It's great to finally meet you.
Hey, Matt, I'm so excited to be here.
Eliza and I are huge fans of your books.
Thanks.
We think that we get to see all the books here at Penguin Random House, the world of cookbooks, and your 2 books have been, we speak about them a lot. So
thanks.
I think
I'm honored.
she's jealous that she's not here for the interview, but maybe for a future interview.
Yeah, of course.
I want to first, you're in New York. You just did the Today Show. Mm-hmm. Your mom is in the studio.
Yes, hi, Mom.
And I just want to get a sense of when you're in New York, where do you like to go out to eat?
It kind of depends. I was just telling someone how I have a different mindset when I'm in New York for work and when I'm in New York just for fun, to see friends. Yeah. I think when I'm here for work, I'm eating for sustenance. I'm eating to just keep my calories up so I can go from Today Show to podcast to I have a book talk this afternoon. But no matter when I'm here, I always like to make a stop in Chinatown, of course, get dim sum there. We're probably going to go, my mom and I are going to get dim sum we might try Tim Ho Wan, which I know there's a location out here, but I love to go there. Last time I was in Brooklyn, we ate at Bonnie's. I love going there too. Getting a slice of pizza somewhere is great, a bagel.
Yeah. I like that you're here to work. It's a grind set.
Yeah, that's how I like to compartmentalize my life. Sometimes I'm in work set, and sometimes I'm in chill out, fun.
It's clear just with your books. There's so much detail, and they're so well considered. I mean, what's the process of writing? I mean, how long does it take to put it down? Because I really, really love your books. They're very, very good.
Well, both of my books had a little bit different of a timeline. I would say that my first book, Mooncakes and Milk Bread, was it allowed me to quit my job as an architect. And I was working on the proposal of that before I quit my job. And so I think from proposal writing to book coming out was maybe 2.5 years. Yeah. And then Chinese Enough took 4 years. Took a really long time because it kind of morphed and changed because while I was writing Chinese Enough, a lot of things happened. Mooncakes and Milk Bread came out, James Beard's, I got married. There was just a lot of life happening. So I'm lucky that I have the luxury to kind of just take a little bit of time and give the books the time and attention that they really need.
And with Chinese Enough, I would imagine you were looking at the scope of Chinese food in America and, there being more education in general for the population. And there being a lot of this cuisine that you write so well about that blends an American identity with Chinese and Cantonese culture and foodways. And were you looking at the broader American landscape when you're writing Chinese Enough?
Absolutely. I was reflecting also on my time growing up in the Midwest, like what Midwestern Chinese or Asian food is like there. And then like kind of also looking back on like my travels, like literally wherever I go, I'm really curious to see what Asian food is like. And not that I only eat Asian food, but like I'm always looking, is there randomly a dim sum restaurant in Tucson, Arizona, or is there a bakery that's in the middle of like Texas or something like that that's like surprisingly good? I'm always looking for good food no matter like where I'm at in that context. And I also was kind of also researching on like what can people access in terms of Chinese ingredients? Because I think that's the hugest mental barrier for a lot of people in terms of finding the inspiration to cook food that's outside of their wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I have to plug, we're appearing at the Tucson Book Festival and in March, so you bring it up.
Yes,
so,
that was top of mind. I'm like, what's the food there?
Yeah,
like,
we're going to have to hit some dim sum when we're there.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely if you're in Tucson, you should come out to our panel. Let's go to Cleveland. You grew up there. My wife grew up, Tamar grew up there. I want to get a sense of what's food like in your household growing up in Cleveland.
It's good. And there's a lot, as my mom is sitting over there.
Yeah.
I feel like in my family, so my grandparents had a Chinese American restaurant when I was growing up, essentially from when I was born until 10 years old. And they had iterations of a restaurant for decades before that. And I feel like we had, for a while, a really good balance of like eating at the restaurant. There's like the family meal or the food that you would they would make. That's not necessarily restaurant food, but you're using the ingredients there. I remember eating a lot of like wonton soup. There's like really good like stews or like chicken curry that's served at family meal. But then at our home, like my family is like a big like home cooking family. We would rather cook at home, and sometimes it's Chinese food, sometimes it's like very American food. Like we grew up also eating like prime rib for like New Year's Eve and stuff like that. It was like really exciting for us to try different types of food.
What's the sauce on prime rib? Is it horseradish, or are you doing?
We make a jus. Yeah. Not like anything creamy on there, so we keep it simple like that.
I love that angle. Prime rib is such a Midwest thing in like Detroit.
Yes.
I remember going out to prime rib restaurants, but it doesn't get any love outside of the Midwest.
I know that's true. I wrote about it a little bit because I have this, in Chinese enough, I have this caramelized onion and like beef noodle soup that is oddly inspired by my family's love of American or Midwestern steakhouses, because I just know that that was their favorite place to go out if they weren't cooking at home or eating at the restaurant. They wanted to go to a prime rib steakhouse, get French onion soup, get a prime rib, get some sort of mashed potato, situation. But you're so right. Like, it doesn't have the same love like outside of that area.
No, not at all. All right, I got to ask you. You're a successful architect. You're making some money. You're living your life. You're also
sort of
okay. I'm framing it in the positive side.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm trying to like hype you here. Okay,
Yeah,
as we're going. All right, but you are writing on the side and you're creating a community. I always want to know. How do you quit the job, and especially a job that you spent so much time in college and masters and getting the degree and getting the job? How do you just quit it and walk away and get into this mindset that I'm going to be a writer? Like what is the moment like for you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a long story, so I'll try to like condense it. So yes, you're correct. I spent a long time envisioning my life as an architect. I was a freshman in high school, and that's when I decided I wanted to be an architect. I just discovered it, and I was like, I think this is it for me. So I spent a long time thinking about that. I loved architecture school. My internships were really fun. I moved out to San Francisco 11 years ago for an internship that turned into a full-time job. And for the first couple of years, like I was just there, just like soaking it all in, making friends, like learning about the career. But then I started to kind of feel a little bit creatively unfulfilled. Not everyone in architecture is, making romantic drawings and constantly designing cool spaces all the time.
Yeah, you're not like looking at Mies van der Rohe sketches
exactly.
and like doing it.
It's not all the time. My husband actually is an architect now, and he has kind of a more romantic relationship with it, or he gets to do like the really cool stuff. But I was like coordinating with like engineers. I was working on door schedules. I was like, I don't think this is it for me. So I started my blog, and I spent a couple years writing there, and it was turned from a hobby into kind of a real thing where people were tuning in or checking in to read my weekly post. And I remember, oddly enough, at my last full-time job as a designer, one of my project designers, his ex-sister-in-law is now my literary agent. And she is an incredible literary agent that represents tons of like such impressive people. And when
Call her out by name.
Yeah. Oh, Kitty Cowles?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know Kitty
You know
here.
Kitty? Okay.
Of
I
course.
wasn't sure you want to shout out Kitty.
A terrific person and agent, and yeah, Kitty's great.
So Kitty, like, kind of, I think Alexis, my project manager, like, mentioned me at like Thanksgiving or something,
Yeah.
and I'm sure she was apprehensive at first, but she read some of my stuff and kind of like plucked me out of obscurity in a way. Like, I'm not being like humble when I say I was kind of a nobody. I was like I was just putting stuff out there. You know, I wasn't on any major scale, and we had a little chat. She thought I should write a cookbook. She believed in she just purely believed in my voice. And that was in early 2019, like in January. A few weeks later, I was planning Lunar New Year dinner. And I decided to do like an apartment party. Like 30 people were coming to our San Francisco apartment. I took off work on a Friday to kind of just prep. I just took like a personal day. And some of my friends that were coworkers came over and they told me like, oh, you missed like promotion day at the office. And I was like, oh, cool. And I realized like I was so indifferent to it. I was like, I don't care. My heart's like not really in this like climbing this career paths of being a designer anymore. I was so in love with like spending my days cooking and feeding people and building community. All these things were just so exciting to me. And I just felt like there was something in the universe telling me that I should explore this.
I mean, Kristina, did you have nice skills? I mean, did you have like a sense that you actually were talented at cooking? Like, you aren't a trained chef. You didn't go to culinary school. Like, there must have been this like innate feeling that you knew how to write a recipe that was very, very, very approachable and could fill a cookbook.
So I knew that I could cook. I knew I could make good food, and I knew that people liked my food. That's something I've always felt really confident in, you know, and that's how I felt most confident in life. It was really satisfying to see someone take a bite of food, and you know that moment where their eyes lit up and they're like soaking it in, like, wow, this is really good, or this is really new. I love creating that moment for people. In terms of actually writing a book and developing a recipe writing style, that was a little daunting to me because the recipes I was writing on my blog, I was purely just writing it based on like how I would kind of see it in books. There was no consistency whatsoever. I was just like just writing how I think it should be. And so once I actually got my cookbook deal, I was working with like a culinary like editor, and Ellen Morrissey, she really helped me hone in on my voice as a cookbook recipe developer.
You got a boot camp.
Yeah, I went to boot camp. It was a huge learning curve. So that was honestly the hardest part for me, was to kind of figure that out. In terms of developing a recipe, in terms of photography, I took the photography for both my books, and creating like I had a creative direction for both my books, like visually. That was very easy to me, I think, because of my architecture background.
I mean, that is such a special sauce, pun intended, when you actually have an art direction background while you're writing it, because you don't have all these like question marks. A lot of early authors don't have a photography background and like a writing to not shoot, but you're writing to shoot. You have a visual. That's a bit of special sauce.
I think so. I'm pretty grateful for it. Like, for both my books and my proposal, I made mood boards and I wrote about the visual language. And I think that was rare for people to read, I think, in the proposal.
Thinking about the segue from Mooncakes and Milk Bread to James Beard Awards, terrific book, broke a lot of ground. But then going to, you know, Chinese Enough, what is the instinct for you for book 2 to go there, to make this your second book?
I had a gut reaction that I did not want to be pigeonholed into a specific style of food. I mean, historically, the last couple of years, I've been writing books about Chinese food, and I have another cookbook idea in the future that's also still in Asian food. But me as a person, I love to cook everything. I love to dissect and just figure out how to make something that I really enjoy eating that might be intimidating or technical, and kind of break it down into foundations. I think that is a common theme that connects all of my work and the way that I think and like move through life. Yeah. And so I didn't even think about potentially writing another baking book after this. My brain immediately went to, I want to do home cooking. I wanted my readers who got to know me through Mooncakes and Milk Bread to know me even more. I think Mooncakes and Milk Bread, it's a baking book that I layered in family stories and like humanity into it. Like I wrote about my grandpa's almond cookies and how that was his first job moving to America. People really love stories like that, but it was still a baking book, a very educational baking book. And I thought to myself, I think people want more of that kind of like human element behind Asian food. And so Chinese Enough is that. It kind of captures, it also captures context and history of Chinese American cooking. But I put a lot of work into writing about who I am, how food has impacted my life and my family and my relationships with the people and community around me.
So such a cool point of view, and it really does translate in this amazing book. And I have questions about recipes. I was like,
fire away.
I was absolutely putting Post-it notes in the book. I was marking things to cook, and that I think the technique is what I'm most interested in, because you're definitely blending. You're actually following through with this idea of Chinese American cuisine, the diaspora, and to start this maple tofu sticks.
Popular recipe.
It's popular with me, and it's number one. And I want to get a sense, how does this recipe represent this point of view of Chinese Enough?
Yeah. So the maple tofu sticks, they visually kind of look like French toast sticks.
They sure do. First thing that popped in my mind, like Burger King.
In a way, they kind of taste like it, because there's maple in it. There's like 5 spice, but it's also vinegary and spicy.
Yeah.
Which I think is this like flavor palette that happens a lot, especially in Chinese American cooking, Chinese American like takeaway restaurants. Like sweet, salty, spicy. Yeah. And I also kind of wanted to tackle like people's like strange fear or aversion to like tofu with this recipe. It's one of my least favorite things when people say like, "Oh, I don't want to eat tofu. It just tastes like nothing."
2025, we're still there.
We're still there. People are still talking about it. I still get asked questions about it all the time. Like, how do I make tofu taste good? I'm like, it tastes good already.
The hippies did a big disservice for tofu. It wasn't the Chinese Americans. Totally. Sorry, hippies. You guys.
You made it weird.
You made it. That's really funny. You made it weird, guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I also wanted to tackle that. And so I was like, let's fry it. But like a casual fry. It's not a deep fry. There's like an inch of oil or whatever.
It's a shallow pan fry.
It's a shallow pan fry.
Yeah.
It introduces like different starches. They can use like sweet potato starch or rice flour, whatever one you have in there, to create this like amazing coating. And it also introduces there's so many layers to it. It also introduces the concept of frying something, but then drenching it in sauce so that it kind of soaks it in. Like you fry something, but it doesn't need to stay super crispy. Like the frying has another reasoning behind it than just texture. It creates this coating that can then soak up more flavor that you get more beyond like marinating your tofu. So you learn a lot about an ingredient, you learn about technique, you learn about flavor, and it's also a really easy and kind of satisfying, luxurious meal that you can make on a weeknight.
Yeah, I mean, it can serve as the main.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, absolutely. Yeah. And especially if you have, some wok greens next to it with some rice, that's dinner.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. All right, one recipe that also stuck out was the steamed pork cake. It's so simple. The technique is absolutely, like, I can't wait for you to talk about it. It's like, for these protein times.
Yes.
Like, we're protein maxing here.
Yeah.
2025 is all about the protein maxing.
Yeah.
So, like, all you protein heads out there, you're going to get your 25 grams from this recipe. Sorry to go
more than that, probably.
Sorry to go macro guy with you. Yeah. But talk about the technique here and kind of the way you're seasoning, a pound of ground pork and taking it to I think a very cool place.
Yeah. So in Cantonese, it's called yuk bang, and it is such an ultra classic Cantonese style recipe. And some of my other book talks while I'm on tour, some people were surprised I even put a recipe for that in there because it's so humble, like unbelievably humble. All it is you take a pound of ground pork, as you said. You can easily swap it out for beef, chicken, if you want to be like super lean, and you mix it up with, I use garlic chives. You can use green onions, any type of aromatic you want or have around you. And I put some dalbujang, which is like a spicy broad bean paste. Again, swap it out with sambal or chili crunch if you have it. And you form this patty. You put it into like a shallow dish that has some walls on it because it's going to create this like, it's going to self-sauce itself, as it cooks. And you put it in the steamer. You steam it for, I think, like 10 minutes or so once it's like cooked through. And that is it. And then you have again straight protein. You have like this sauce that kind of pools around because the pork cake shrinks a little bit. And then you take scoops of this pork cake, put it over rice, spoon a little bit of that sauce that was created, and it's so easy.
Zero oil.
Yeah, zero oil. Yeah,
Which
steaming.
is
Yeah,
like to repeat, it's in a bamboo steamer.
super healthy. Yeah.
Right. But still you're not missing that pan fry with, we love meatballs obviously and pork patties, but you're steaming it. Technique that's very classic.
Yeah.
But maybe not done enough with pork.
Yeah, exactly. I think steaming in general should be a little bit more of a popular cooking method. I think a lot of people are still confused. I get that's another question I get all the time is how to set up a bamboo steamer.
Yeah, it is. You look at it, you're like, okay, I'm going to really put this on top of my range. But honestly, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I prefer a bamboo steamer that matches the size of your pot or whatever vessel you're boiling water.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all
it
you got to
really
do.
is something everyone should have.
Yeah.
What about the air fryer? I mean, could you possibly air fry it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Then you're kind of making like a baked pork cake. Yeah.
It's a little more, not getting the steam.
Yeah, you're not getting the steam, but you probably get a little bit of caramelization. You can even hit it with the broiler at the end, to get a little bit of crisp on it.
You give permission to combine udon noodles with like a tomato coconut curry sauce. So it's like udon with like curry and tomato. And you're like saying this is the way to cook udon, which I am so here for. I love that.
That recipe in particular probably might be like the, in a way, least Chinese because you're using like udon noodles, and you're using like coconut milk, but in a way, all those ingredients exist in my pantry. They exist in my mom's pantry. I feel like it's a pantry noodle in my mind because using tomato paste and coconut milk that's like shelf stable. Udon's also always in my freezer, and I wanted that recipe as something that just kind of open people's brains to like what a pantry meal could be, like it's not always like spaghetti and a jar of pasta sauce, like you can try a bunch of different things and still have
same instinct.
Yeah, same instinct, different ingredients,
same instinct, and I think we love udon.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite noodles. I think it's really perfect.
It's perfect for saucy things, and it's great in broth. Of course, that's a traditional technique.
But it's so starchy. It makes your sauce, whatever you add it into, like really silky and cling to.
So great. Tell me about peanut butter and chengfeng.
Yeah,
that to me also it speaks volumes about the way you can cook from your pantry. The Chinese enough element is clearly there. Midwest peanut butter, I have to say that it's probably inspires a little bit from the Midwest.
Peanut butter is one of my favorite ingredients to use. I actually just used it in a Lunar New Year recipe that doesn't normally have peanut butter in it. It's like these sweet dumplings that are filled with just crushed peanuts and coconut, but I add peanut butter in there as like a binder.
Yeah.
And I think it's really nice. But so I introduce it into a lot of different things. But the peanut butter and chung fun, or PB and chung fun in my book is inspired by the afternoon snack that my dad would always make for me, which was also an afternoon snack for him in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, you can go to these carts or stalls that have freshly made chung fun, which are rice noodle sheets that are rolled up. I kind of equate them to like gnocchi. They're like light and pillowy and chewy and really nice with lots of different sauces.
You can probably use tteokbokki too.
Yeah, you can use tteokbokki too. My friend who loves that recipe, it's easier for him to get tteokbokki instead.
Yeah.
And the texture is just denser.
Yeah.
But still chewy, but still works.
But seek out chengfeng too. Yeah. Like that seems like the best, obviously, the option there. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like a rice noodle roll and it's normally doused in hoisin, sesame paste, or even like peanut butter, or sriracha. You can put lots of different sauces on there. So my dad made that growing up. And like this version, the chengfen's pan fried first. So it's crispy. It gets a really nice char on it. You hit the pan with a little bit of soy sauce that gives the chung fun like a nice kind of like caramelized brown color. And then you make a spicy peanut sauce. Like, the spicy peanut sauce that you would get with like fresh rolls at Vietnamese restaurants. It's like, it's kind of like that sauce, but a little looser, a little spicier.
I know what you're saying.
I wanted it to be silky so you can kind of like drizzle it over the noodles. Or you can just toss it if you want it really saucy. I like options.
I love options too. And listener, like take a pause. Just like let's soak in what Kristina just said. These books really work because the technique is so sound, and you've clearly you've done the work to make technique really the focus here, because you're taking a few ingredients, which is what we all want. We seek that in our recipes. But if you just throw it in and make it a mush, that's not really technique. That's just like braising and mushing, which is fine. I'm a regular guy.
Yeah.
Fine. But like think about it as a cook. You want to know these hints. So Kristina, how did you like unlock these techniques, without a culinary training? I'm just so impressed.
That's a really good question. I don't know. I think it's like something pretty innate.
Yeah.
I think it stems a little bit from maybe my architecture and design background. Like I like
Yeah.
to understand the why and then envision the result of something. Like when I was designing like a space, I would try to think of like a room, like what we're in, like how many chairs do you want? What orientation? Like what do you want to feel like in there? And so when I think of a recipe, I'm envisioning like how is someone going to feel as they make this? Is it going to be really frustrating? If it is, how can I make it more efficient, less
Yeah.
stressful for them? You know, like how can I make the ingredient list as it should feel special, but also shouldn't have things in there that you don't really need. You know, again, like I mentioned, I think mental barriers and recipes before, and I think about that all the time, especially with the recipes I tend to write. Like I'm not making just like a normal chocolate chip cookie. People are like, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. You know, but peanut butter and chung fun, they're like, oh, what's chung fun? I
Yeah.
don't want to get that, you know, or like, do I really need to buy hoisin? Like, I want there to be a really good reason for you to buy
Yeah.
all those things.
Yeah, I mean, you're using your architecture brain here, and it's a real skill set that's unique, and I love the work. You use your brain as well in bringing ranch dressing into your cookbook. Bless you. We're pro ranch on the show.
Love
Talk
it.
about it a lot. Ranch is getting good, by the way. There's like lots of bottle brands. That's a
Yeah.
separate day. I'll go over the bottle brands I love.
Full
but-
taste test.
Full taste test. But smashed ranch cucumbers. Never seen this before. Brilliant. I think we all love smashed cucumbers. We recognize smashed cucumbers as being a really classic, Cantonese, technique throughout China, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you see
Cucumbers everywhere.
you
Yeah.
see it everywhere. You see it in Sichuan food all the time. But how did you figure this one out and tell us about this dish?
Okay, so since you're from Michigan, when you go to the grocery store there, is there an aisle that's like full of like dried dip in like soup packets? Do you recognize that aisle or a section?
I head there early in my trip. I want to see some dehydrated
Yes.
ranch powders. Yeah.
So I feel like I grew up with that so much, and they don't exist in the Bay Area where I live now. The only kind of like dry dip mix that I can get is Hidden Valley ranch seasoning in a bottle. I buy that all the time. Growing up, my mom would make ranch chicken wings. Like she would make like a dry chicken wing and like dust it in like the ranch powder.
great.
So
Yes.
great. So in a way, it kind of feels like a pantry staple for me. I was like, I want to make like a really light and crispy cucumber salad, but maybe not use like the creamy ranch dressing to mix it in. That would be delicious too. I've done that all the time. And so I was like, why don't I just put like the dry mix in here, add some like rice vinegar, get like the juices out of the cucumber and like mix it all into like, and it looks like a classic smash cucumber salad, but it tastes like incredibly Midwestern at the same time. So that was kind of like my thought process for that salad.
So brilliant. Yeah, you're getting that's like a steakhouse side.
Yes, I'm curious to see when that's going to show up somewhere.
It's good. Yeah, some restaurants is going to pinch that. I'm sure the chefs are grabbing your books because you're going to see these on menus. Another recipe I want to talk about is also an unlock, purely original. Why has nobody thought about this before? Banh mi pasta salad. Wow, I'm really inspired to make this. Talk about your thought with bringing these classic Vietnamese flavors to the tubular pasta.
Yes. And people will be surprised to see it because it is like a Vietnamese inspired dish in a book that's called like Chinese Enough. But there's a lot of like crossover there in the way that I grew up and like my friends and like the place I live now in the Bay Area. So that pasta salad lives in a chapter that's called Take It Outside.
Yeah.
And I really wanted a chapter that was dedicated to backyard cookouts in the summertime. My family would always have like a big cookout in the summer. My birthday is in the summer. And my mom makes her own version of like pasta salad. But I didn't want every recipe in the book to be like my mom's recipe. I'm like, what is my pasta salad? And this recipe, I owe it to my husband for giving me this idea. Like we were eating my favorite banh mi. That's like, it's only like $4.
Can you shout it out? What's the name?
Banh mi Ballet in El Cerrito, California. So good.
El Cerrito's got such good food.
Yeah.
I love
amazing.
Yeah.
And we were eating it one day, and like if you think about it, it's like you have like your crispy baguette as your carb, and then you have like the Vietnamese mayo, you have like the pickles in there, you have cilantro, the pickles and jalapenos. And he just said, he was like, this would be really good in like a salad form. Like you don't even need meat in here. I guess you could add it. It's like, that's such a good idea. So I executed it. I kind of combined a technique of making Hawaiian mac salad with using the flavors of banh mi. And it completely works. And I really love the pickles. I call them party pickles in the book, and they're inspired by both Vietnamese pickles and then also Cantonese pickles. Like a lot of times you'll go to a restaurant in Hong Kong and there's like a communal jar of pickles on there that you can like kind of add like pickled daikon and stuff. And so that's a recipe that kind of, again, connects recipes together and is also just solid, like so good.
What's the creamy factor? What's kind of, serving as that iconic spread on a banh mi?
I'm using Kewpie mayo.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'm using Kewpie mayo. That's what I have access to. That's what's in the pasta salad.
Yep.
Last year, I had like a really big, like I think it was like a 64-ounce tub of Kewpie mayo.
Oh, you went food service size.
Yeah, I got a food service size Kewpie mayo, and I was really happy about it for a while, and I made the pasta salad with it because it's just so easy to scoop,
Fun fact, Kewpie is turning 100 years old this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. 100 years of Kewpie. I love the iconic packaging too. What a cool dish. What's the pasta shape?
I like to use like fusilli, like the spirals. I think it's really nice. I like the fusilli that is a little bit longer because it matches the size of the pickles. Yeah. I don't know. I like the ratios of the ingredients going. I want everything to kind of go well together in terms of your bite size,
I mean, that's your brain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about I would imagine the details.
Yeah.
It's about proportion.
Yeah.
It's about white space when needed, white space when not needed.
Totally. Like the little minced pieces of jalapeno can fit into the spirals of pasta. But when you use a fork to like get your pasta, you can also get your carrots because they're all like the same size. Like it all works really well together.
I have to ask you, like, as an interjection.
Yeah.
Top 3 architects in history. I mean, what's your face is I just did this on the spot.
Okay.
Or 2 or 1 or.
Okay. This is probably so corny, but I'll probably say my husband, Ruben Alt, is like one of the top 3.
Ruben Alt.
Yeah, Ruben Alt. He's super talented.
Yeah.
He designs really beautiful homes. I really enjoy probably Charles and Ray Eames. I was happy one of the case study house in LA did not burn down. Yep. It's one of my favorite projects. And one more. I guess, so when I used to live in New York City 12 years ago. I was an internship at Todd Williams, Billy Chen. Yeah. And their duo, I remember I loved them in college, and it was like a dream for me to work there. I still really love their work.
How do you look at buildings in New York? I mean, as an architect, as a former architect, as a current architect, how do you look at, we walk around the city, we see these construction sites, we see new things popping up all the time. Mm-hmm. I rarely get to speak with an architect, so I'm just taking advantage. How do you view a New York City cityscape?
I would say, so like, I think personally for me, because I live in the Bay Area and I've been there for like 11 years, when I come to New York City, I feel a little bit like a country bumpkin because of the scale difference. Like the city is just so big and it's like amazing. So it's a little overwhelming for me.
We're turning over buildings a lot more too.
There's like a lot of it. And I think like me personally, I've never really been into like, the design of like skyscrapers or like big multifamily buildings, and so that's kind of like a lot that I see in like New York City. But my mom and I were actually just like walking on the High Line last night. That was like one of my favorite places to walk on. Like when I lived here, I go there when I can, when I visit and stuff. And I love looking at the apartments that are like on the level of the High Line. I love studying like how their windows are designed, and like some of them think about privacy and some don't. And the materials, like I think some of the buildings were thinking of how they reacted with like the nature aspect of the High Line, and some really don't. I think I pick up more on things like that, like how are things reacting to each other, whether or not, instead of do I like what that looks like?
It's really
it's a little arbitrary. Like I just like to know like what were they thinking about?
Yeah, what was the concept behind it? And I love the High Line plug because you can see so many various styles of buildings, and you're up close to the materials.
Yeah, you can like almost touch them.
You can almost touch them. It's such a good call. All right, back to recipes. We often ignore the last recipe in a book, but not on our show. On page 351 is a recipe for the Cleveland-ish cassata cake. It looks great. It actually, I do this question sometimes, and I'm like, okay, maybe that is a throwaway. This is not a throwaway.
I don't want any throwaway recipes.
No throwaways.
I think a lot of people treat their dessert chapters often as a throwaways sometimes. And
me? Sorry, Dookie. Didn't mean to sell you out there. No.
Not calling anyone out. I guess also like there's not many dessert chapters in Asian cookbooks.
I know, they're challenging.
Yeah. And I think my first book, Mooncakes and Milk Bread, like it was a huge, lots of baking, lots of pastry. So I was like, my dessert chapter, like I'm going to make it count, especially the very last recipe. A lot of times when I structure the flow of my recipes within a chapter. Sometimes they go by, I'm just thinking of like the banquet worthy chapter, which has more like special meals. It goes by protein style. But a lot of my recipes go from easiest to hardest. I don't necessarily state that in the intro or anything like that. It's more subliminal.
It's a vibe. You progress through if you're cooking through the book, of course, linear as some people do. You get to get it's a well thought through concept. I like that.
Yeah. So the last recipe in the dessert chapter is the Clevelandish cassata cake, which is a project, but it's not super hard. It's inspired by a cake that has made an appearance in my family in Ohio at various birthdays, graduations. It's my parents' wedding cake.
Wow.
So cassata cake is like is historically a Sicilian cake.
Yeah.
It's like a sponge cake, a cream of some sort, mascarpone, maybe some like liqueur soaked fruit in it.
Yeah.
In Cleveland, it's not that. In Cleveland, it's like a fluffy sponge cake. It's whipped cream, and it's the strawberry filling that has like a lot of, it's like a syrup.
Wait, a cream cake in the Midwest? Are you serious?
Yeah. Wow.
Wow, it's a shocker.
Yeah.
There.
So that was the cake, and my mom really loves that cake, that style of cake.
Yeah, it's great.
And my parents actually got married in Hong Kong, and when they went to Hong Kong, she asked the bakers in Hong Kong to make this version of. Oh, there's also custard in there. I forgot about that. She asked the bakers in Hong Kong to make that version of cake for their wedding, which is not too far of a deviation to Chinese style cream cakes, but the addition of like custard and like fresh strawberries and things like that is like slightly different.
A little bit of a dramatic approach.
Yeah, slightly different. Yeah. And so the recipe in my book is, again, another iteration of that, just taking it like a little bit further to how I like it. Like there's a little bit of creme fraiche that's folded into the whipped cream that makes it easier, I think, to clad it. If you try to clad a cake with whipped cream, it can be a little messy. So I like it fortified.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
I hope people make it. Have people made it? Have you seen it?
I've seen one person make it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, you got somebody cooking the last recipe.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like that could be like a whole study. Like who's actually making the very last recipe of the book.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, we should go there. I mean, I love it. Kristina, this is Taste. We ask guests about the discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
Yes.
The best fruit.
I love a persimmon.
Tell me about a perfect persimmon.
A perfect persimmon. So in my mind, I'm thinking of a fuyu persimmon. And I want it to be ripe enough that it has a little bit of a give to it. It's a little bit soft, but it's not completely mushy. And no seeds.
The worst vegetable.
That's hard. I love like all vegetables.
Yeah, but you got to answer it.
Maybe a parsnip. Yeah. One of my least favorite. I don't know. I think because it's really hard to get a good parsnip. When it's good, it's really good. But a lot of times people don't cook parsnips very well.
Yeah, the cooking technique is usually pureed and maybe not what we want.
Yeah.
The vegetal nature of it can be challenging. Yeah. Good answer. I like that. Okay, tough one for you. Haven't written a baking book. The best dessert.
The best dessert, I think, requires a lot of components. I want a piece of cake or a brownie, something like that. Slightly warmed up with a scoop of ice cream, topped with something crunchy. Maybe it could even be granola, or even like I've been playing around with like sweet panko breadcrumbs. Like I'm all about texture. So I want the ice cream that's cold. I want a cake or brownie that's hot, and I want something crispy on top.
Such a good answer. How do you think about sweetening panko? I love this idea.
Because if you think about a savory panko, so a panko is just like breadcrumbs, often from Japanese milk bread.
Yeah.
And for a savory one, you're either toasting it in butter, maybe adding some seasonings to it. So I've been doing like butter, cinnamon, brown sugar, sweet panko on top of ice cream. Amazing.
So amazing.
I haven't shared that with the internet yet. So
I mean, we're just riffing here.
That's something I've been playing around with.
It's an audio version,
Yeah.
We're just riffing here.
Yeah.
We're riffing here. But I guess subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah.
Subscribe
maybe
to the
you'll see
Substack.
it on there soon.
Yeah, see it on there soon. Where do you want to travel in 2025?
So many places. I want to make another trip to Hong Kong. I want to go to Taiwan. I want to go to Japan. And I also want to go back to Granada, Spain. My husband and I went there 10 years ago, and we're thinking about doing a 10-year trip.
Oh, I love that. Mm-hmm. When you travel, what's your style? Are you like hardcore restaurants? Are you kind of balancing out with culture and
Definitely a lot of architecture.
Yep.
We love to like hit up like all the iconic spots. Like my husband and I will just kind of wander around, just like literally look at buildings.
yeah.
Like that's like a fun thing for us to do. We definitely try to do a balance of like making reservations at some places so we know that we can get in there, try to check it off. But then we allow time for what I like to call organic exploration. You know, you just like see what happens.
Yeah.
You're like walking around like that looks good. You walk in. I love traveling to places where I know someone there because I think it's really nice to kind of get like a local perspective there. I love going to Hong Kong with my dad.
Mhm.
I went there with him 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
I think I would just go to places that I wouldn't go on my own.
Oh yeah, got to get those sources.
Mhm.
Got to get those inside looks. A couple more. Your favorite cookbook of all time?
Oh, wow. Okay. The first one that came to mind is this cookbook called Grandma, Grandpa, Cook. I don't know. Have you heard of that book
No,
before?
I haven't. But the structure of the title makes me. It's like incredible. It
I'll
begs
have
a lot
to
of
send
questions.
you a copy. I'll send you a link to it later.
Yeah.
But I saw it at my friend owns a jewelry store in San Francisco, and I saw it on her shelf. I'm like, what is this? And I got myself a copy later because it's incredible. It's the pages, half the pages is in Chinese characters, and it's also in English. So you get this like amazing dichotomy of having both languages visually represented there. And the book features it's one of those books that highlight like a few pages are highlighted on like one grandpa or a grandma, you know?
Oh wow.
And they tell a little bit of their story
That's
and,
really
and then
cool.
they share a recipe that means something to them. They're all the ones in here are very humble, like again, home I was looking at it as research, like humble Chinese food, like maybe it's like fermented or I'm just thinking of my mom right now because she's right
Mhm.
there, but like a salted fish pork cake or something like
Mhm,
that,
mhm.
or something with like fermented bean curd and like vegetables, like really, really homey. And I think it's just a really special book. I've never seen a cookbook that has been presented in that style so that like both cultures could enjoy it.
Yeah. Last one. Your favorite sandwich?
I love an eggplant parm
Oh yeah.
on a hoagie that's like light and crispy and like kind of chewy. The bread is so important in
So
eggplant
key.
parm for me because you want to be able to bite down effortlessly.
Yeah.
But I love that.
But you want a little crunch because you're a crunch person.
Yes, you
have-
want texture, but you want a satisfying experience of biting down.
Is there somewhere in San Francisco or the world
So
that does it right?
it's kind of hard for me to find. It's hard to find in the Bay Area. I was like, maybe there's one here that I could get that's a little bit better. But in San Francisco, the best one I have had is at this place called Limoncello. It's one of our favorite places to get sandwiches in San Francisco, and their eggplant parm was really, really, really good. It's been a couple years. I'm like, I need to go back.
You gotta go
there.
back.
I don't live in San Francisco proper anymore.
Yeah,
I live
yeah.
in the East Bay, so it's like,
Yeah.
am I coming in to get this sandwich? Maybe. Probably yes.
Well, Kristina, Joey, I hope you come back. This has been such a great time. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thanks for having me here.
Eleanor Wilkinson, welcome to This Is Taste. It's great to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to meet you too.
This is gonna be a fun chat because your book, One Pot, One Portion, is out now, and we'll talk all about that. But you're in New York from London. Where are you dining out? Where are you eating?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here by myself, so it's great because it means I get to choose what I eat, how much I eat, it's a lot. So I've only been here for 4 days, and I feel like I've already eaten really good. I have done a bit of a mix of like casual and a bit fancier. So there's been bagels, Russ and Daughters.
Yeah.
I've done a couple pizza places, Joe's Pizza.
Yeah.
Upside.
Oh, you're going on a real crawl here.
A little bit. And then I've also been to, actually last night went to Sood. Is that how you say it? The Thai place?
Yeah. See,
That was incredible.
really hot reservation there.
I know, we got lucky. We went kind of early and
got
we just snuck in there.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. Would really recommend that. Also Aggie's. Is Aggie's Counter or Aggie's Counter?
Aggie's, you said it right
It's
the first
Aggie's.
time.
Aggie's
You
Counter.
made it out to Aggie's.
Yeah, went for brunch there.
I love that Jeremy's a friend of the show, the
Oh,
chef there.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. I feel like I'm in the know.
Tell us, how was your meal at Aggie's?
It was brilliant. We I heard the brunch was really good.
Yeah.
So I went with a fellow cookbook author, and I had a really delicious, I can't remember the actual name for it, but it was like a biscuit with egg and cheese and hot sauce and biscuits aren't really a thing back home, so
No.
it's so nice to have a really good one. A really good one.
The American South, that's where the biscuits come from.
Yeah, I went to I was in Nashville and New Orleans 2 years ago, and so had some then, but this one was different.
Yeah.
This one was a bit lighter and flakier,
Yeah.
and it was great.
You've hit some spots. I like
Thanks.
it. I like
Oh my
your
god, I'm glad
style.
you think so.
Are there good bagels in London?
I think bagel culture is different, and I think maybe you'd have a bagel in London and be like, yeah, that's a good bagel, and then you have a bagel here, and then you're like, oh, okay,
That's the origin story right there. Yeah,
bagels back home maybe aren't as good. They're a bit different, but they really are. They're better here for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about East Yorkshire, where you grew up. It's not London; it's more rural.
Mm-hmm.
And I always love having guests on who are from not London, England. The not London, England guests.
Yeah.
Because there's such incredible foodways in England that we just don't get exposure to. What's it like growing up in East Yorkshire?
It's very different to London. It's rural countryside. There's a lot of farms, a lot of farmers. It feels slightly more traditional in terms of English food. It's not quite meat and two veg, but it's not dissimilar. Big, comforting, hearty family meals. And my parents both cooked a lot of homemade meals for us, which was amazing. So we were really used to kind of those family dinners, lasagnas and cottage pies, shepherd's pies, macaroni cheese.
Yeah.
But always with both my parents are doctors, and so there was always like a little healthy twist, which was nice.
Right.
But then, I'd say there was a mix between this quite kind of hearty English food and then also some other things that maybe weren't quite as traditional. So my parents lived in India for a year, so we'd have curries and kedgeree and things that maybe other people weren't eating quite as much.
Sounds like a great upbringing.
It was, it was a really great upbringing. Very lucky.
What's the deal with Yorkshire pudding?
I mean, iconic, number one, and completely delicious. I will say that's one thing, actually, London cannot do a good roast.
Yeah.
There's, you need to go up north if you want a proper roast, a good Yorkshire pudding with thick gravy and, you can't get it. But they are really, really good.
Yeah, so it's like part of that Sunday roast culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Yorkshire pudding.
Yeah, for sure. Although, there's big debate as to whether you have it with every roast or whether it's only for a beef roast.
Oh, right.
Because a lot of people are very, very much like, you cannot have a Yorkshire pudding with chicken or pork. It's only with beef. Whereas I'm kind of the opinion that if you can add a Yorkshire pudding, why wouldn't you add a Yorkshire pudding? So
yeah, if it's available, you gotta have it.
Exactly.
Don't hold back.
Exactly. Why would you deprive yourself?
Yeah, why deprive? So your book is really cool and unique. It's about cooking for one, cooking solo, and I wanted to get an idea about the perfect recipe. I know you have many in your book, but what makes a perfect meal for one?
I think it's a good question, and I think for me, it's all about making the process of cooking for one enjoyable, because that's a huge barrier for people, is that cooking for one feels like so much effort. It feels like it's not worth it. You might as well just, make something that will feed you for the whole week. So I think for me, the perfect meal is about kind of taking away those barriers. So it actually needs to be easy and accessible and probably not take that long. The result will be worth the work. And I think that that's a huge part of cooking for one. And then everything kind of tastes better when you've enjoyed making it. So that's kind of the first thing. And then other than that, I think it's the best part about it is that it's really unique and individual to the person making it. And so
totally agree.
From a flavor perspective, that's about checking in with yourself and figuring out what you fancy that day, what you want to eat. Is it something really comforting? Is it something really fresh? And kind of the perfect meal, therefore, changes every day. But as long as it's always easy, you can kind of have fun with it and experiment and do whatever you like and be a bit selfish about it, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, can eating for one just be like a bowl of cottage cheese?
I mean, we'd maybe add something to the cottage cheese.
There you go. You're like the expert.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love beans on toast.
Yeah,
it's great and it's a classic for a reason. And if that's what you fancy, then that's the perfect meal. I think what I try and do with my recipes is maybe bring a full kind of well-rounded flavor profile, but using either hacks or those kind of ingredients that bring flavor without having to do anything to them. So, if you want to eat a bowl of cottage cheese, fine, but maybe we'll add some salt and some honey and some hot sauce and
hot sauce on
yeah,
cottage cheese.
Love cottage cheese with a pickle.
Yeah.
Like on a
Indian pickle or like more of a European style?
Like a gherkin.
A gherkin,
pickle. A little Cornichon, actually.
Cornichon's
so
good.
You get a bit of crunch with your cottage cheese. And then actually I love it on have you ever had, so it's kind of gross actually, but a salt and vinegar rice cake.
Yeah.
With cottage cheese, cornichons, maybe a little slice of ham.
I'm all about having the acidity, having that ham, having a little bit of condiment on there. Yeah. I'm sorry I even brought up cottage cheese. I don't even know if you like it.
Cottage cheese is having a moment.
I know, right?
She's kind of the it girl at the moment. She's everywhere.
She's everywhere. Cottage cheese fans, right in. I think I'd like some more ideas.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about when you shop for one. I think one big barrier for cooking for one is this idea of food waste.
Mm-hmm.
Our grocery stores are, at least in the States, they sell you a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're cooking for one, you don't want to waste a lot of stuff. Like food waste is a huge problem.
Yeah.
So how do you think about shopping for these meals for one?
It's really hard. And I think it's people cooking for themselves or living by themselves are quite overlooked in a lot of society. And I think you see that in supermarket produce. And whilst it's great that things come in family packs and that probably makes it easier for families and more affordable. When it comes to cooking for one, you are then left with either, 3 chicken breasts that you don't know what to do with or like a whole pack of ground beef or whatever it is. So for me, for every recipe in the book, there's an ingredient or there's a recipe pairing which takes at least one of the same ingredients and uses it again in a completely different way, a completely different flavor profile. And that was really important to me because if you're not kind of solving the whole problem, you're not really solving any of the problem. And so you can't be left with a ton of vegetables left in your fridge going bad. So I try and create recipes that use similar ingredients but don't feel like you're eating exactly the same meal.
Yeah.
And then what I also do, I create meal plans for people. So I take 5 different one pot, one portion recipes that use similar ingredients. I write the shopping list and I tell you, if there's any swaps to do.
Yeah.
So that you can have one weekly food shop, but 5 completely different meals and hopefully like minimal waste at the end.
Like that a lot. Is there like a vegetable, I'm putting in the spot, that is just like perfect for buying that big bag of it and then you can, incorporate into a lot of different dishes?
Oh, I mean, frozen vegetables can actually be a really great option because if they're good quality, they're picked and frozen fresh, then actually they can just be a great way to minimize food waste. Other than that, I'd say my most used is probably something like broccoli. Like you can kind of add broccoli to everything and it tastes good. So
I mean, my wife Tamara and I, we have broccoli challenge. We'll buy like the biggest possible bag, like literally, and we're like, this is going to be done by the end of the week.
Yeah,
and we slide it into everything.
Yeah, I think the hardest one is maybe like spinach.
Yeah,
you can only buy spinach in huge bags.
I know.
Then you're kind of finding new innovative ways to like chuck spinach into something.
You gotta. Sometimes you just gotta juice it, right?
Yeah,
you just
exactly.
gotta juice it.
Yeah.
What drives you to write a recipe? Like when you went to culinary school, you got education. Your book covers the swath of cuisines.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really cool. But like, what when you're sitting down and thinking about writing a recipe, what drives you?
I think it really varies. Sometimes inspiration comes from a meal that I've eaten in a restaurant. Sometimes it comes from, just 2 flavors that I think might work together. Other times, I think when I'm cooking for myself, when it's not necessarily developing a recipe for work, often it is a fridge-made meal. So it's whatever's in the fridge. Okay, how can I put this together in a way that's not just, pasta? But what's interesting is that then I think that's kind of the way that I'll make something just for myself, and then I'll be like, oh, that was good. I could probably rework that and redevelop that into a recipe that I could share with other people, and they would enjoy that because, they probably have similar ingredients left in their fridge. Other times, I think sometimes if people leave me a comment or send me a message saying, their situation, and they'll say, I'm a doctor and I only have 20 minutes to create dinner, and like your recipes have really helped, then that kind of sticks with me, and I'm like, right, I need to do more 20-minute meals. And then it's, the inspiration kind of comes from trying to solve the problem, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. I mean, 20-minute meal, that's a skill.
Yeah. Yeah, one pot, one portion, and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's putting a lot of pressure.
That's quite
on
a
you.
lot of. That's a tight.
What's one 20-minute that's from the book that comes to mind like right away? Like,
one of the best is the creamy green linguine, which is actually uses broccoli and spinach. You cook it with your linguine in the pasta water, and then it's almost like a carbonara-esque sauce, so that you don't have to cook it. You just add it in afterwards. It takes the same amount of time as it takes to cook linguine, basically. So it's 15 minutes.
So you're doing on the range, you're doing like the sauce in the pan, you're boiling the dry pasta with the vegetables at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Pulling out the veg, putting it in the pan.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And then mixing egg and pecorino, fresh black pepper with the pasta water to create that kind of silky emulsified sauce. Mix it all together, a bit of chili on top. Yeah. And you're kind of good to go, and you've got a really great meal.
Absolutely smart. I mean, that's a really great way. And I think it's a great reminder that you can definitely boil things with your pasta.
Oh, for sure.
Like use that single pot.
Exactly.
wisely.
Exactly. Just adjust your timings. Like start the pasta slightly sooner and then add in the veg or whatever way. There's always kind of ways around things to make things one pot. And I feel like that's kind of the way my brain works now. It's like, right, something would normally take 3, but I can do it in 1.
You can
That's
do it in
my
1.
challenge.
It's what you do. I love it. Well, let's talk about lasagna for one, because I think I saw that recipe. I'm like, okay, we got to like talk about this, because I think there's a lot of stigma about lasagna being a multi-day process or even all day. Here at Taste, we actually published a lasagna cookbook.
Oh my goodness.
My former colleague Anna Hiesel wrote it. It's terrific. And I think she maybe did a one-er, but what's your single serving lasagna recipe?
So I love this recipe. It's one of my favorite recipes in a book, and I think it really like epitomizes what the book is about. It's about taking something that's traditionally a huge family dish that does take a couple of hours and 5 or 6 pots, and reworking it so that you still get the same flavor and the same like feeling that you get from eating a lasagna, just in a simpler way. So I think it's potentially controversial. I don't think the Italians love my recipe, but that's
Wait,
that's okay.
The Italians have commented?
Oh yeah. Oh, I've had some like voice notes from angry Italians telling me.
Do they use the Italian gesture emoji?
Oh no, but I can hear it in their voice. I know that they're doing it as they're saying it. But I love the recipe, and it basically, rather than it being a layered lasagna, you create your kind of meat ragu, and then you use fresh lasagna sheets folded into the sauce so that the pasta cooks in the sauce. And then instead of a bechamel sauce, a white sauce on top, we're using mascarpone, which is a soft, creamy cheese, which melts down on top of the ragu and genuinely creates a really similar effect. And the whole thing, you can make the whole thing in definitely less than 30 minutes, if not 25 minutes, which for a lasagna is kind of mind-blowing. And I think when you try it, if you try it, I don't know, it's hard to go back to traditional. No,
definitely. I mean, you sometimes just like crave that the layering of pasta, the best, the creaminess that it was formerly bechamel, but is now a swap. And you're baking it too?
So it's done on the hob, and then it's just finished in the grill, in the broiler.
Oh, the quick broil. So,
yeah, exactly. Just to kind of melt the mascarpone kind of melts, and then the mozzarella on top just bubbles up. But other than that, it's on the hob. And I think it's an example of, I think there's a time and a place for spending hours cooking something, and that's a really beautiful process to be enjoyed. And don't get me wrong, I love that. I love making things that take hours. But, on a Tuesday night, you're not going to do that, especially when you're only cooking for one. You're not going to wash up all those dishes at the end. And so this is an alternative. It's not the only option, but it's a really great option.
It's a beautiful option. And I must just say, hob is so much better than range or stovetop.
It's quite cute, isn't it?
It's so cute, and if I incorporated it with an American guest, I would probably be laughed at. But I might just do that. I love that
Do
word.
it.
French onion soup for one. Okay, I landed on this recipe. I was like, this is really smart. We tend to think that you have to caramelize the onions for a long time, and it takes like hours and hours, or an hour. But you've simplified it. What's your French onion soup for one recipe?
Well, it is actually fairly similar in terms of the process is the same as the traditional French onion soup, and the caramelizing of the onions is still really important. That is where the flavor comes from.
Right.
But the difference is you're cooking, I can't remember how many onions I use, maybe 2, as opposed to 2 kilos of onions. And so just by scaling it down, you're cutting down the time to, I mean, you kind of want minimum 30 minutes on your onions. If you have an hour, leave them for an hour.
Yeah.
But if you were cooking it for 5 or 6 people, you'd be like an hour and a half, 2 hours just sweating down the onions. So,
I mean, you're sweating the onions for hours, and then you just chopping the onions for real French onion soup at scale. It's like that's a project.
It's a lot. And this one, other than that, it really is quite a traditional process. But there's just something so nice about it being simplified.
Yeah.
At the end, you have one bowl. I'm kind of averse to leftover soup as well. Like, I know everyone loves a little meal prep soup.
Yeah.
But there's something about reheated soup that I'm just not. I'm
I
really
love
on
this
board with.
controversial take.
I know.
Must say.
I'm sorry.
Controversial take, but let's dig into that a little bit, because like the perception is that soup is best the next day, or sauces are best the next day. But you have a point of view. What's bothering you about the next day soup?
I think maybe it just makes me a little bit sad. I don't know. I think with a sauce maybe different if you're then mixing it into pasta, but when it's just a bowl of soup and you're taking it out of a Tupperware and then you're putting it and I'm like, oh, it was better yesterday. It's just always better.
Fair.
The day, or maybe it's just that I get bored of soup.
I think that's
easily.
it. You just don't want to eat the same soup.
Maybe I just don't because I'd happily eat reheated pasta because I'd rather eat pasta than soup probably.
For sure.
So yeah, maybe I just don't like soup that much.
I'm into it. I like you've explained it. You've made your point. I like it. All right, sticky toffee pudding, one of the great British dishes in the canon. We see it a lot in New York now. We have this little bit of a British invasion happening with restaurants. Truly one of the best desserts in the world.
It really is.
What's your sticky toffee for one?
So yeah, sticky toffee pudding is truly like one of the most comforting meals you can ever make, one of the most comforting puddings. Normally you would create, the cake batter and then you'd make a sauce separately. But my recipe uses a technique that you see in a lot of self-saucing puddings. So you make your cake batter, you leave it raw in your baking dish, and then you put the ingredients for the sauce on the top. So you put little knobs of butter on top of the cake, you sprinkle over sugar, and then you pour over boiling water. And it's honestly magical. I kind of wish you could bake it in like a see-through dish to see what was going on, because the sauce somehow mixes with the butter and the sugar, and it kind of cascades down the side of the sponge and creates a little pool of sauce at the bottom, but without disrupting what's going on with the actual sponge itself. And it's honestly incredible. There's the same technique as my self-saucing chocolate mug cake, which is a 5-minute microwave job.
Yeah.
But you get the incredible chocolate sauce at the bottom. And yeah, my sticky toffee is the same. And it's, again, the result is exactly the same in terms of flavor and the comfort that you get. It's just done in a different way. And I absolutely love it.
Eleanor, tell me about the deep pleasure of making a dessert for one from scratch. There's got to be an emotional connection you have with this practice.
Yeah, for sure. I think the fact that there's always a reason to not have dessert. There's always, especially when it's just you, there's always a reason to be like, oh, I don't need it, or I don't have the time, or I could just have a piece of chocolate. There's always a reason to say no. And so when you say yes and you think, no, I'm going to spend half an hour, 20 minutes, 10 minutes just making something that I'm then going to sit on my sofa under a blanket, my candles are on, I'm watching a film, and I've got this dessert. There's something about holding a dessert in like a tiny little pot. It's just for you. And it's this really like romantic self-care aspect.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost this reminder to just be like, no, I deserve the nice things in life, and I would make it for somebody else, so why wouldn't I make it for myself? And yeah, saying yes to yourself in the form of sticky toffee pudding, which I think potentially sounds a little bit deep, but it is. I think try it and you'll be like, no.
It's deep and it's really well said. I think there's something about cooking for yourself that it is self-care. A lot of folks listen to the show like cook for, stress relief.
Yeah.
Or just to distract from other outside forces. And ending the meal with a dessert that maybe you make after you've completed your meal, right? You could make this after you've done the dishes even.
Yeah. Or maybe you're only having dessert for dinner,
Preach.
Right?
Preach. Very cool.
Right?
Very cool.
I feel like, look, there are no rules when it comes to cooking for one. You can do exactly what you want to do and nobody is there to judge you.
No one's there.
And that's beautiful.
Beautiful. And I have to ask about tarte tatin for one. Another pure grail dessert recipe. I love that one.
Yeah, again, a really classic recipe which has a very classic technique. My recipe, again, mostly follows that. We're just using a couple of hacks. We're using store-bought pastry rather than making our own pastry because, store-bought pastry is great.
It's totally great.
Yeah. And
no one has a sheeter like they can make like their own pastry.
Exactly. And then when it comes to the apples, you can kind of choose whether you want to keep them a little bit chunkier and you get a bit more of a bite to your tarte tatin, or you can really thinly slice them and they melt down into this like jammy, almost like apple compote that mixes with the caramel and gets all chewy at the edges, and it's just glorious. And again, that process of flipping it out of the pan, plating it up just for yourself, it's romantic, isn't it? It's very, very Parisian.
Yeah, it is. And talk about self-care as having one of those guys at the end of the day.
Exactly. A little dollop of ice cream and you're pretty much in heaven, aren't you? So.
What's the ice cream of choice? Are you doing Haagen-Dazs in the UK?
Yeah, do you know what? Haagen-Dazs is good. We have some really good like UK ice creams.
Yeah.
Like there's really good Scottish vanilla ice creams. There's good Cornish clotted cream ice creams. Anything with good quality vanilla, or maybe like a little bit of sea salt in there. Yeah, I think you can't really go wrong.
You can't go wrong with that. Eleanor, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
The best fruit.
A ripe summer peach.
Oh my gosh. Like, what are you going to do with it?
There's nothing, just nothing, absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
I'm going to sit there and I'm going to bite into this juicy peach and all the juices are going to drip down my hands and it's going to be messy. And I think there's genuinely no better taste or feeling than being like, wow, that was the best peach I've ever had.
In the summertime too, it just reminds you of that.
Yeah, and even if you're not, if it's not sunny where you are, but you eat a really good peach, you're like transported to the beach in Italy or something. Even if you're in grey, rainy London.
The worst vegetable.
Oh, easy. Mushrooms. I hate them.
Okay. This is controversial.
I know.
There's a lot of, mushrooms are, foundational.
I know.
But I'm not judging here. No way.
Well, if it makes it any better, I've really, really tried to like them. I was vegan for 6 years and mushrooms are such a staple for a lot of things. And I can't get on board with them. I just think they're kind of gross. And people will be like, oh, well, try enoki, try this, try that. I'm sorry, I don't like any of them.
Okay, let's do a little therapy here. So what are you feeling when you have a mushroom in your, in your kitchen? What's causing you to get the ick from the mushroom? I'm really curious.
It's a good question because actually chopping mushrooms, I love the feeling of chopping mushrooms. They're really satisfying to slice. As soon as, I think maybe if you have an English fry-up at breakfast, people often cook mushrooms either in the pan or in the microwave with butter and maybe a bit of garlic, and I just cannot stand the smell. It's it's not for me. And then the texture I don't love. Yeah. But it's mostly the taste and the smell. I'm just you're just I can so do without. The board, there's one mushroom recipe in the book, and that's it. That's what you're getting. That's what you're getting.
That's all you're getting in your books. What is your typical breakfast?
I think it's normally some kind of egg with bread, probably a scrambled egg on sourdough with a bit of crispy chili oil. I eat breakfast quite late, like 10, 11.
Yeah.
So I like something pretty substantial. Or I love like a soft flour tortilla with a fried egg, chili oil, spring onions. But yeah, eggs, you can't go wrong with it. Eggs and bread.
Your savory eggs.
Always savory. I'm a big, savory always for breakfast. Yeah.
The best dessert.
Apple crumble. Apple crumble. Always, a million times over.
Nice.
It would be my desert island dessert. But I'm quite specific, and I'm not sure. This is quite a British reference, but school dinners. So yeah, the lunches that you would have at school. There's a very specific type of apple crumble, which is kind of stodgy. It's about 50% fruit, 50% crumble, kind of stodgy, and like that's what I want. I don't want oats. I don't want cinnamon. I don't want anything fancy in my crumble. I want stodge.
That ratio, you're pushing it there.
Yeah, I know.
I'm into that.
Absolutely. And like a hefty amount of custard with it.
So when you're craving fast food, what's your go-to spot?
I think it would probably be a burger. And I have to say, like, there's some good burgers in and around London, but I love a Five Guys. I think you really can't go wrong if you want proper fast food.
Yeah.
A Five Guys burger and their fries are really, really good.
The fries are great.
The fries are really good.
Five Guys made it across the pond.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Big time. Yeah. There's they're everywhere now.
Yeah. Your favorite city outside of the UK to visit for food?
So I was in Malaysia last summer, and I think Kuala Lumpur is an amazing food city. There's so much flavor. I love kind of Malaysian cuisine, Malaysian flavors. So I'd say Kuala Lumpur, and then I have to say, being in New York for the last few days, it's kind of up there again for me. Like, it's quite similar a food scene to London, and it's great.
Aggie's Counter will do that for you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, stopping by there, we'll make it.
Yeah, that and a big slice of pizza, and you're you're good to go.
Last one, your favorite sandwich.
Okay, I actually have a sandwich formula which can then be applied to like any sandwich if you want to hear it. So it has to be a meat, a cheese, a crunch, a sauce, and ideally something like pickled. So my probably ultimate one would be a steak sandwich with a melted cheese. We've got chimichurri, which is kind of the sauce and the pickle because it's a little bit vinegary. And then I want crisps in my sandwich, like salt and vinegar crisps, chips.
Yeah.
Because I think you need all the textures and all the flavors. So yeah, something pretty hefty.
I love that idea of the ratio.
Yeah.
Have you had barbecue potato chips ever, or crisps?
Barbecue.
Yeah, the flavor of barbecue.
I mean, we have barbecue ones back home,
okay.
But maybe they're better here. Maybe I should get some on my way out.
Maybe get them on the way out to the airport now. I was wondering. I love that. I love putting a crisp on a sandwich.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. And you have to squish it down a little bit so they all break up.
You get that little sound. Right
Yeah.
There. Yeah, I love that. Eleanor Wilkinson, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thanks for having me.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.